friend is building a really neat vise clamp system with a couple 2x4s and carriage bolts. These are hex bolts, but anyway. They'll be able to clamp down on wood and with a couple wing nuts tighten it on a workbench. I think it's a really neat system, and they're asking for help getting the holes drilled cleanly and to line up from board to board. So I'm going to give a couple tips on how to get the holes lined up and a couple tips on how to hold a drill properly to get your holes straight where you want them to be. All right, first we're going to find the center of our board. Now, 2x4s should be 3.5. They can still vary a little bit. This one is a 1/16 inch shy. When we make our mark, instead of 1 3/4, which would be half of 3.5, we're just gonna pull back a 32nd, a half of a 1/16, and make a mark there. 1 3/4 minus. Now we'll do the same from the end. Oh, look at that, we did pretty good. 1 3/4 minus. Now we've got a couple marks, and we can extend them with a speed square as needed. Now we have a little plus, and the very point is where we want to drill. We could go ahead and make the same holes on the other one, or we could just take this board and line it up on that one, clamp it down, and then when we drill, we're guaranteed to have the right placement. And if your bit's longer than 3 inches, you could just go all the way through it. If you want to make sure you're not getting off course, you can go ahead and mark the same spot on the bottom and then track it as you go through. Let's do that. Now we have X's in all 4 spots on this board. For the size bolt we're using, we need a minimum of a 3/8 inch hole. You can start with a pilot hole, a much smaller one. Make sure that you hit your mark on both sides, and if you need to drill any double holes, at least it's not the size of your final hole. So all your errors will be with a smaller bit. Eventually you'll get it right, and this one will follow that line. We have just over 1.5 inches extended, so we'll go through our first board and make a pilot hole in the second board, and that's all we need to do for now. Okay, when drilling, make sure you're always on the drill attachment, not one of the numbers. If your drill has the option of low gear or high gear, I prefer to have it in high gear. I believe if it's moving too slow, that can cause the bit to catch and grab and move you off course. So I'm gonna put it on 2, high gear, and have my bit moving a little bit faster. I'm not gonna have it moving so fast that it's out of my control, however. One more thing. If you're worried about your bit traveling on the surface before it engages, you can use an awl or a nail to make an indentation directly on the point of your X. Don't use the palm of your hand. Now there's just enough for the bit to sit in that hole and it won't get off course from the beginning. Okay. What I've seen a lot of people do is something like this. You see, there is a huge curve going on from your elbow all the way down to the bit. That's gonna get you off course. I recommend keeping your arm as straight as possible. It doesn't have to be up and down over, but at least straight in line in one direction, having a second hand on the end here. Now you're holding it firmly, and when you squeeze the trigger to engage, At no point did I engage it on full speed, but I didn't just squeeze it to get it started. I had it going about midway. And that, for me, that's the speed that I find gives me the most control while drilling the cleanest hole. So let's see how we did. Up top, we're good. Let's see how we did on our X on the bottom. I think we're perfectly in line this way, and we're about a 1/16 low in the other direction. 1/16 of an inch will not make much difference. So let's do the other side. Now, as you get used to this, you may not have to do the preliminary steps of the awl and the pilot hole. You can just go ahead and drill it with the 3/8 bit. But this is a way when you're just getting into doing these things for some of the first times to make sure that you end up with a clean product. I really like the drills that have a level up here and you can know when you're exactly up and down. This one we strayed a little bit also, 1/16 and down and to the side. Now that we have our pilot holes, we've got our 3/8 inch drill bit and we're ready to go. I've changed the orientation so when we drill this one, we don't go through the table, we go off the end. And we're gonna do the same thing, same hold right here, just like this. We're going to get started a little slowly, and then as we work through the first board, we'll be following the pilot hole, but when we get into the second one, there is not a pilot hole. So let's just see how it goes. So that was on real time, no speed up, so you can hear the sounds it makes. Now, we didn't mark the bottom of our second one, but let's put a tape measure on it and see how we did. Center of the hole, well, it's less than 1 3/4 from that side. Center of the hole, 1 3/4. So we're off by about a 1/16. And the center of the hole is right where it's supposed to be in that direction. Yeah, so we did pretty good. Let's see if we can get this other one better. Didn't quite make it through. So when you have a long hole to go through like that, as you get deep down into it, there's going to be debris and the bit's going to be working harder, and some of that noise is, you know, the bit rubbing up against the cavity it's just made. So the reason I pulled it out early was to clear out a bunch of the debris. And even though it was making that noise, the wood and the wood grain was not grabbing at my drill and jerking my hand, because I was going at a fast enough speed that it was still cutting cleanly. My battery was charged up all the way, which is important. My bit is new enough and sharp enough that it could do it without problem. So if you're experiencing some of those issues as you're drilling, those are some things to check on. We're off by 1/16. And I think we can live with that. There it is, how to get your holes to line up.